Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media production, and our second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today we're going to talk about the website, our website. What are we doing? Where is it? Where have we gotten to? And where are we hoping to go? And where do you want us to go? So we'll be taking your comments and questions around the website as we kind of brainstorm some of those things, as we do a lot of these internal streams while we're finding a new space for our little space. So if you have comments or questions about that, go ahead and throw those in. As well as if you have general questions, you can throw them in throughout the first hour. If you are in Makana, vote those questions up, throw those questions in, tag those questions. If you're not in Makana, you can simply use this little QR code here. And this is askofficehours.global. You can just type it in, askofficehours.global as well. And you can ask questions there 24/7. So we file them all in at the beginning of the day. And so if you've got questions, go ahead and throw them in there, and we will answer them as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Jason, what do we have?
Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC, Canada writes in, how would I go about creating rolling credits similar to what Office Hours has for a podcast? I have a free version of DaVinci Resolve.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
The trick to doing a rolling credit so it's silky smooth as it goes up is to make sure you set the speed and the positioning and the size of the font so that it plays nice with the sub-pixel rendering that might be going on. There are some plugins out there that calculate each pixel as it moves up one step. It doesn't put it in between pixels, which is what causes the jitter or judder, as Courtney calls it. I do it in After Effects all the time, and I use an expression which Chris was able to dig up that calculates every single frame as it renders it out. So I know After Effects isn't what you asked for. I'm sure Resolve will work as long as you make sure that if you're getting too much of that judder or jitter, try changing the speed, try changing the size of the font, try setting it where it starts. You just got to make sure it doesn't get in between the pixels.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think the official word is jitter, according to this YouTube video, jitter or judder. So we've solved that problem. There's a website called End Run, which has tons of tutorials about how to. It's a lot of information about how credits are done and how to do them well. And from that video that I showed here, there's actually a link to a Pastebin site which has that expression that Mitchell was talking about. And it's a very short tutorial. I think it's I go back to here. I apologize. It's like, it's a 4-minute tutorial on how to do it. And it's super easy. You make a null object, you paste the thing into it, and then you parent it to the text. I would recommend that you use Illustrator. So the answer, Alexander, is what Mitchell and I would say is make a file outside of Resolve and then bring it in.
And is it end run or end crawl?
Go back. End run.
Endrun.com?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Look at this. The title, look at this. It says right here, end run, but it is called endcrawl.com. You are correct.
Okay. I was like, there's a new site that does this?
There's a new site on how to make credits. But the trick, what Mitchell was saying, the trick is you got to get the speed right. And this is one of these things where technology and physics and technicians are going to always butt heads with producers, because the producers are going to go, can you just make it a little faster? No, I can't. There are a few speeds that it will look really good.
We are no longer paying for the film. Like, we do not need to make it go faster to save money on film. That's what it used to be. It used to be if you multiply that by 6,000, this is how much it's going to cost us, $80,000 to run it a little slower. I mean, literally, I've been in those conversations. I'm just kind of like, it's just digital bits now. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I was going to do a tutorial, but Chris just did it, and just to show you how simple the fix is. But looking back, there used to be a day when we used a Chiron to do a silky smooth crawl and credit, whatever you want to call it, and have no problems with it. And by the way, there is a website that film producers use to do crawls. They just type in the information, and the company will output the credits for you with that silky smooth crawl at the end, whatever they use internally. But there is a site that does that.
And everyone should use it because most films do not have that. Like what you see is a jerky crawl. When I go to a theater, I mostly notice jerky crawl. One thing that makes that worse is white on black. So if you do, the contrast makes it worse. I have done some where I've added just a little bit of motion blur, and it actually smooths it out a little bit as well. So that's something you can do. It makes it a little harder to read them. And for most people, it's the credits are really important because that's what ends up in IMDb. So it's useful to be in the credits so you can have those things. But I don't think you should be really modeling your closing credits after office hours. I mean, it's good. It's very, very solid. But I think you should look at a series of unfortunate events. I think that's really that's the high watermark of end credits is a series of unfortunate events. I mean, they do break into it. It's so great.
Is that a movie? What is that?
It's a movie. It's a movie, and it's just the best.
Lemony Snicket.
Lemony Snicket's a series of unfortunate events. Is that the one where
they run it backwards and it's not going up, it's going down?
No. It was all done in After Effects, and it was done in about 10 days. I was actually in Albuquerque. They did the motion graphics. There's a great. Did we just miss it? I think we did. A great motion graphics conference that is done in Albuquerque, and it is. But they had the guys that worked on it, and it was like 15 days or something or 10 days. They did the whole closing credits, and they are just a work of art. They're little 2D planes inside of 3D of him in the ocean and bad things happening and everything else. It's super creative. I love opening credits and closing credits. I don't, when they're done well. And I think that my favorite open is probably The Kingdom, and my favorite close is probably the Lemony Snicket. Yeah, go ahead.
The Kingdom is amazing.
It's just
We've talked about it before.
We've talked about the thing with The Kingdom is, it shows you how it's what education it gets you up to speed about what's going on for the movie. In 2.5 minutes. Like in 2.5 minutes, I'm going to teach you something. I feel like that's what that's as close to what I would call B212 education. B212 education when I refer to it as when in the Matrix where she goes, I need a program for a B212 helicopter. Anyway, so yeah, it's good. Yeah, good, Mitchell.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and if you give up on the rolling credit, you can do the one that fades up and fades down, fades up and fades down. That's perfectly legit.
Mm-hmm. I think we need posterized versions of everyone starring Mitchell Hill, Josh Kaufman. Anyway, next question.
Chad Lafarge in Columbia, Missouri writes in, Chris, as an editor, how would you approach making a supercut or montage of our Office Hours birthday song tradition? It could start with a more recent or current one, like, yours.
Chris?
So here's how I would go about doing this. There is a website that Jonas uses that can search the text of a channel. Like it does the whole channel. And so I would search for words like, birthday or this is embarrassing or don't be weird. That would be one of the things I would. That's one of
we
Alex's
can't do that,
mantra
though.
in
but we can't do that here.
Don't be weird.
So, but it is.
What's it called? Can film what?
But it is your birthday.
Yeah, but
isn't it true, Mr. Fenwick, that today is your birthday? Yes or no answer only. Yes or no answer. Don't try to explain it.
Your Honor, when I took an oath, I swore to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I cannot answer that question with a single word. This lawyer is asking me to perjure myself. May I please?
He swore on a Spider-Man comic, Your Honor.
All right, here we go. Is everyone ready?
Don't be weird.
All right, is everyone ready? All right,
Don't be weird.
There's no way to not be weird on this, but it is what it is. All right. So I will start it. But everyone just try to follow me. Don't try to listen to anybody else. That way we almost all stay in sync, except I'm slightly ahead. All right. And Chris makes it harder when he does that. So he's just trying to make it harder. Okay, here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Chris. Happy birthday to you. There we go.
And many more.
And many more.
But there is that website. Mickey, can you say it one more time in my ear?
It goes right back to it. All right. Yeah. Happy birthday, Chris.
Filmot.
There we go.
Okay.
Courtney, did you want to add something, Courtney?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that Mitch, with his graphic skill, create a bouncing ball over the lyrics that we can play as a lower third to keep us all in sync.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. We did that. Here's the funny thing is, so there's an uncanny valley problem with the birthday thing, which is that we did that early on. I did a bouncing ball version of this, and people got close enough that it was actually super weird. There's something about the car accident version of it that actually works. And as soon as we got close, you just heard that we were all out of tune and there was a whole bunch of other things. So it actually, I gave up on it because when we got close, it sounded worse than when we were just kind of doing the best we could. So I decided to stop. We could practice.
Meatball.
What we could do is start practicing as a choir. You know, like we could have weekly happy birthday meetings, and that wouldn't be weird at all, would it, Chris?
Well, why don't we use that Far Play app that was...
You know, a distant relative of mine wrote the song, Hill.
Oh, nice. And is not getting any royalties for it anymore. I think that we finally solved that problem. There was a whole lot of happy birthday and all this silliness, and they finally were like, no. Same thing with the Kookaburra song. Finally, we just was like, no. All right.
When will we get that way with the Mickey Mouse stuff?
We are getting that way because it's slowly rolling out. The earliest Mickey Mouses are now up public domain. The earliest version
the one
of
from
Mickey
38?
Mouse. No, from 33.
Steamboat Willie is now public domain.
Yeah. So the longer Disney fights the fights that they're doing right now, the more Mickey Mouse will be open domain. So look at the silver lining of all of this. It'd be great. So, and once Mickey Mouse is public domain, then Disney has no reason to stop fighting.
Except they incorporated Steamboat Willie into their trademark and re-trademarked it. So it's still going for another.
They can hang on, but it's going to get ugly over the next 5 years because it's going to be harder and harder to protect all of that. All right, next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama, PA writes in, which cameras does Amazon use for their Thursday night football show? Video quality looks really crisp and sharp. I could see the knit from the shirts.
You know, I think that I don't know which one specifically. I believe it's Sony 4200s. I was trying to get around to reaching out, but I was trying to get set up here, and so I couldn't. I don't use traditional broadcast cameras, and so I'm not 100% certain. But there are. You know, the cameras that are kind of in that range are the Sony HDC 2000Bs. I think the 4200s are a little older in that area. So I think that but it's going to be the newest 4K, Sony systems. I believe that's what they're using. 5500s, 35. There could be a 5500, a 3500. Those are kind of in that range. I'm going to keep on talking. Hope that someone from the team pings me, but I haven't seen it yet.
Those are box cameras, aren't they?
No, they're not box cameras. They look actually the form factor actually looks a lot like that one there, but it is that's a 950, and so that the cameras look a lot like that. They're still broadcast cameras. They have box lenses on them, so there's these huge box lenses on the front, 90x, 100x more on those lenses. But they're typically these, the camera backs the cameras are still what look like typical broadcast cameras. At least that's the last time I've seen them. I haven't seen them recently at one of these things, but those are the types of cameras that I would guess that they're using is probably like the 5500 or 3500. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida writes in, I've used QuickTime to record remote control, but how could you get similar quality local recording for an exec using Windows? Thank you.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I would suggest not even using your computer, but if you can get an isolated image of that exec on an HDMI, or if he's using a local camera that's HDMI input, like I am now, you could run it through one of these boxes. This one's kind of from ClearClick. They're fairly cheap. They record H.264 onto a USB stick, and they do a pretty decent job of recording the audio and video in about a 10 megabit per second H.264, either 720 or 1080p. And it's completely isolated. You don't have to worry about your computer slowing down or Windows doing a update in the middle of it and stopping recording or dropping frames or any of that stuff. Or if you're using Zoom ISO, you might be able to run it through a box like this to independently record. I'll let everyone else opine on how to record it locally using QuickTime.
Go ahead, Josh.
There's a couple of things you could do. You could use OBS to capture if you're looking to screen scrape. Zoom also has integrated recording features, so you could either do a cloud or a local record. Nice thing about the local records is you can get the ISO audios along with it if you tick those in the settings. There's a few things in the settings that you can adjust to have less GAC on the screen, but OBS works pretty decent to capture a secondary image.
Good, Chris.
The key to Andy's question here is he doesn't want to rely on Zoom's bandwidth to be smooth. To Josh's comment, to Courtney's comment, Courtney, you're not going to get a C-level guy first of all, he doesn't have a camera that's HDMI. He's using a webcam. You're not going to get a C-level guy to crawl around behind his computer with a little box and a bunch of cables. That's never going to happen. Never is a C-level person going to do that. I think we have to read our questions better.
I don't know. I think that.
Well, would you get him to install special software and set
Chris,
it up right and hit the right record button at the right time?
No, but what it sounds like Andy is doing on a Mac is saying, please check on the thing that allows me to control your screen. Then he opens up QuickTime. Then he feeds the webcam into QuickTime. Then he hits record, and then he says, "Sir, you may begin now." And I think that's really brilliant, actually. That's a pretty brilliant solution if you can live with the webcam and the bad lighting, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is there an on-screen recorder in the Windows world?
Not on-screen recorder, because what he's doing, I think, Andy, you can let us know, but what I think that Andy's doing is using QuickTime to record. He's not doing screen captures.
No.
He's capturing to QuickTime. The question is there
agree.
I think that you could do it. You could do it with OBS, on that type of thing. Would do it. OBS will record.
Built-in app though? Is there a built-in app in the Windows that will just say record my webcam into it,
like a video input?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a recorder. The camera app, which comes in Windows, has a record button in it, and
there you go. That's the answer that Andy's probably looking for.
Now, how would I do it? we sent Blackmagic 6Ks to executives.
People to the guy's house, and they're going to show up at the doorbell going ding ding ding.
No. You if they have an executive assistant, you get them to set up a 6K camera and you control it over Bluetooth through the Bluetooth app, and then you hit record on it, and it doesn't matter what their bandwidth is. You're going to get 6K log back, and then you put it together, and it works great. It is a little bit of a setup, and some of the executives, if they have to set it up themselves, let's say during COVID, if they have trouble with the mount on the tripod to the teleprompter, you get a lot of blowback. Go ahead, Courtney.
I might point out, I'm not sure, I'll have to check it with the latest version of Windows, though. I think if you launch the camera app, if something else is using the camera, you can't use it. So it only lets one application use the camera at a time.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, the QuickTime. With Mac, it used to be that way, where only one thing got the video at a time. But now it's like once it's in the system, everything can see it. They can all attach to it. Go ahead, Josh.
I agree. Didn't quite read the local record part of that problem. You can use Riverside FM to invite them on there, and then you'll have the access to push them to that software. It's not on Zoom, but it works similarly. You can record things for their side, and then after the record process closes, it'll upload that local record.
And just remember that if you don't pay enough money to Riverside, they will they crop your camera aperture, so you can't actually see the whole image. It is the most ugly business idea maybe ever. Like maybe not ever, but really, really dumb. Like, it's why I won't use them. And it's mostly just that I just find what they did with that to be repugnant. Like, that's the technical term for what they did. And they should not do that. Like, and I'm just going to keep, every time we talk about Riverside, I'm going to bring up the fact that they do this weird crop and it's just to get you to pay more. Like, it's repugnant.
So
Go ahead,
are you saying you don't like it? I'm a little confused.
It's not that I like it or not like it. I'm just saying that the technical term for it is repugnant. And so hopefully someone cuts this out and sends it to them. It's repugnant.
So you sound wishy-washy. Sometimes you really like it and sometimes you really don't like it. I'm confused.
Repugnant. All right. Okay. So anyway, hopefully someone cuts that out. You can send it to them. I'm happy to talk to them about it, but it's repugnant. All right. All right. So anyway, if you'd like to ask questions, we're just slowly working through these ones for the first hour. You can ask them right now in Makana. Make sure to vote on the questions. The voting makes a huge difference because it orders our questions for us, lets us know what you think are the most important questions for the first hour and the second hour. So if you've got questions, you can tag them in Makana as Office Hours for the Office Hours website. That's what we're going to talk about for the second hour. If you want to ask general questions any time of the day, you can go to askofficehours.global. That is askofficehours.global. And you can ask the question. Use a little QR code right there. If you don't know how to get into Makana or how to get into Discord, all you got to do is go to officehours.global/join, and you will be able to actually get an email every day that will tell you how to do that. All right. Let's go to the next question.
Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona writes in, I need to buy 5 mics for a podcast that is mobile. Looking at the MV7 lineup and see they've added the MV7X, less money and no USB interface. I have a mixer already. Is this a good way to save budget or is it lower quality sound?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, the sound would be exactly the same. And it's true, they do have a XLR only and a combo version with the USB and the XLR on it. But, to save a few bucks, here's what might happen to you somewhere down the road. You might have to do a job and the mixer doesn't work, and you can't do anything with that XLR connector. If you had the USB, your backup, plug it into your laptop or your desktop computer. I guess you can get at least 2 microphone MV7s into a Mac M1 before it starts to get nervous. But I think the USB is a good thing. And it's a little bit of an insurance policy, so I'd recommend you stay with that.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I wouldn't use a USB mic because if you're going to have 5 mics in this podcast, you might run into difficulty with 5 USB streams coming in and trying to mix them. So you'd be better off with if they have that X version, it's just XLR only. That'll work good into your mixer, provided your mixer has enough gain. Make sure you have like a Sound Devices or. Actually, the F6, the Zoom F6, has auto mix in it, has 6 inputs, and has enough gain to handle those dynamic microphones. So that's be good. You said you have a mixer, so just test it with that mixer to make sure you can get enough gain out of them with those MV7Xs that are XLR only. But you're going to run into trouble if you're trying to mix 5 USB mics. And besides, if you've got a 5 input, if you've got a 5 mic podcast, you may want to have some type of auto mix in there because if you don't know who's going to talk when, it's going to sound like a whole room full of noise.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, if you're buying a hybrid microphone, you want it because you have both the accessibility of the USB and the XLR. So if from a value proposition, it doesn't really make sense to buy a hybrid if you're only going to use the XLR. I agree with what Courtney said and Mitchell as well. Having an interface helps to be able to put your mix minuses. Unless you plan on mixing on software on the computer, you're probably not going to need that. I find that economically, if you need a USB mic, buy a USB mic. If you need an XLR mic, buy an XLR mic. If you need the hybrid, get the hybrid, and you have the capability to do either.
Go ahead, Chris.
Jack, I'm going to be the dissent here. I would get the MV7 because, yes, you're probably going to do these people all at once. However, you may need to, because you're doing it around the campus, we could go through another lockdown. You may have to send mics around to people. It's $150 more per mic to go ahead and get the MV7. I would just do that.
Yeah, the audio quality is not only the same but slightly better if you use the XLR than the USB. So it is we have a lot of MV7s floating around. We use them for the podcast that I work on, and with Gray Matter, and we find that they sound good. I will say that the gain coming out of the USB is just barely enough. So that's usually the challenge on our end. But it is nice, and what we can do is it means we can send this to somebody and they don't have to have an interface. They just plug it in and it goes. And that is a really very valuable piece. Now the other thing you can do, if you decide later, this works fine too. This is I think this is made by Shure, or is this Shure? Yeah, Shure makes this little it's MVX2U. This is the little guy here. I don't know if I can get it to focus. I can't. The one thing about Sony is they will focus on so this is a little interface that you can put on the end of any mic. It turns any mic into a USB mic. So this is about $129. So you could just convert it later if you decide to with this. So as long as you know that you can go out to get something like this is actually a better USB interface than what's built into the MV7. So if you're willing to have another piece that's on here, and one thing they took away from this is all the controls. So it has a headphone out on the back so that you can get the zero latency return, and it's USB-C. The problem is that the MV7 is USB micro, and it's really not very, it does not handle heavy use well. So that's the problem with the micro and on that mic specifically. So my temptation would be to get a couple of these and then get the MV7Xs. We use the MV7s because I don't want to think about another piece of equipment, but I am on the border of getting these even for the ones that we have the USB micro, because the micro jiggles out a lot. And so that's the only thing. This produces a better result there. So that's something for you to think about there. And I think the price, I think you'll end up buying this for the same price, the same as the delta between, or very close. Maybe not. It's not $150. I think it's like $100 or $90 or something like that between the two. So you might pay a little bit more for these later, if you decide you want to add a USB, but the USB there will be better than the one that's on the actual mic. And remember, there's an MV7 dB. I don't think that improves the quality of it just makes it louder. And so the quality of the preamp. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, when I was reading it, I was like, oh, wait a second, there's a mic I didn't know about. So to be clear, we all know the SM7B. That's like the classic, large diaphragm, blah, blah, blah. Then there was the MV7, which is the USB/XLR. Recently, they came out with the SM7DB, which is the one that basically has a cloud lifter built into it. What is the MV7X? And that's only $179
right,
at Sweetwater.
That is the MV7. Yep. That's what he's talking without the USB. So I'm saying that you could save money on that and just get a bunch of MV7Xs, and then if you decide that you need to send it to somebody, you get one of these and you send it out to them. Because this is I don't know if it'll sound better, but the USB interface is a lot better. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm voting for the device that Alex has there. I think that's cool. And if you don't mind, would you post that, Alex? That's a Shure product, correct?
It is. It's an MV. I'll let somebody else post it right now because I'm hosting. But MVX2U.
There you go. And the other thing to keep in mind is if you have USB available, you can plug it into your 15 iPhone.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, but I still think you're going to run into problems if the 5 mics are in the same location. If you're bringing in people remotely and you're sending the mics out, yeah. But he says here in the question, 5 mics for a podcast that is mobile. So it sounds to me like he's moving the 5 mics around to different locations. And there's the SM7DB, I was going to mention that does have the higher gain on it. So it's XLR out, but it uses phantom power. So you got to make sure your mixer has phantom power, all the inputs.
Yeah, I think he's trying to save money on those too. And again, you can, for a podcast, we have to remember that the auto mix works. If you have to stream it, the auto mix is really important. For a podcast, you're getting all the individual, you're recording all the individual tracks. And so you're going to fix it in post.
You're going to mix it later? Oh, big pain. I would never do that.
Oh man, welcome to podcasting. So much of that. But you could use something like an auto mix. But the bottom line is that For a podcast that isn't going out live, you can absolutely automate that later, and it really doesn't take that much time. If you have a MIDI control board for it, you can sit there and fix it almost in real time, because I'll play it twice the speed. I'll go through it, and just not twice, but 1.5, and I'll sit there and just move everything around and then go back and tweak everything. And it takes about the same time as the podcast. But we usually assume that there's going to be post in most podcasts. So next question.
Our own Guy Cochran used the QR code from Los Angeles and wrote in, is the new Haivision 460 4K HDR bonded cellular transmitter better than LiveView's offering? And he includes the link.
So I did take a look at it when I saw the question come in a day ago, and I looked through it. I don't see anything that makes it dramatically better than LiveView. I think that the real question that I wasn't able to answer looking at the website was how much does it cost? But it looked like they kind of, I don't know if you saw something that I didn't see, but what I saw was them trying to match the LiveView offerings almost feature for feature of like, hey, we can do that too. So I think that that's the thing. And I'd probably let somebody else take the first pass at that for production, only because it's new and LiveView's been doing this for a long time. So I think that it's what they're doing is hard. And they may have figured it out. And 5G makes it a lot easier. Like if you're in an area that can get 5G, you get a lot more bandwidth, and it's a lot easier to do. So they might be able to work it out. And Haivision has a lot of great transfer products that work well. So if anyone was going to be able to compete in this area, it'd be them. But I didn't see anything when I looked through it. When I scanned through it, I have to admit I haven't tested one. But when I scanned through the website, I didn't see anything that stood out like, oh, that's way better than LiveView. I just saw it as they're doing a LiveView, and so it feels like they have to compete on price. Next question.
Kyle Heyman in Chicago, Illinois writes in, what good live caption tools are out now for a live stream of theater?
It just depends on what you're trying to do. So there is the company that kind of really owns live captioning is AI Media. So if you do AI Media, they've got a couple different options there. One is you can pass the stream through their system, and it will use AI to caption it. AI Media came out of, I believe, Australia, and a lot of it had to do with Australian laws were very intense about accessibility. So you had to have a lot of languages available. And so they built up both AI and re-speaking and a lot of other things to make it more efficient. And then they bought EEG, which is the large in the United States and really in broadcast, the big player there. So AI Media, what you can do is you can pass your RTMP feed to them and then have them pass it back out to wherever you're going, and it'll add the captions. It won't you can burn the captions in if you want, but what it will do is it'll add it to the actual metadata that goes out. So what would typically be in a traditional pipeline, a line 21 or the bank data, is then usually our encoders encode that as a separate stream going out as typically like a VTT stream that goes out. The AI Media will add that in the middle and then give it back to YouTube or Facebook or whatever. The other way to do that is to use actual hardware. So EEG makes what's called a 492, and that's going to be SDI in, SDI out, and it's going to add it to that bank data there. And what you can do is connect via iCap, and you'll use either something like Lexi, or which will automatically connect to iCap and then do AI as well, or you can have a captioner sitting on the other side typing away. So those are all things that are able to be done live from hardware. There's Falcon and a couple other ones that are done by EEG, but they're kind of blending what AI Media does, and there's this kind of slow, mix of things that are going on between AI Media and where EEG used to be. So they're just kind of mixing and matching those things. There are other options, and there's going to be many, many options for live captioning as we move forward because of AI. But those are the market leaders right now. Go ahead, Courtney.
And one question I had is, if it's live theater, it's a scripted, let's say you're doing a play that is scripted. and they've done this performance many times. Could you load the script in so that you have all the text in there, so you don't have to use AI to decode it, which will delay it considerably. And so in a live stream of that theater, you're going to be seeing the captions 5 or 6 seconds after or longer after the words are said, if it's having to decode in real time. But if it has the script in advance, and you could have someone just trigger each line watching the play to make sure the captions go out in sync. I built software to do that on a live TV show, so that the audience could see the captions in the right language in real time, so they'd laugh at the right moment. So timing was critical, but I didn't know of anything that's out there.
Well, if you send it into their online version, it actually syncs it up because it's tying those. There's no delay in the AI. Like it just throws them in, or it's a little bit of a delay, like 1 or 2 seconds, but it's really, really close. The other thing that we've done is if you send the video, if you actually separate the video and use an HTTP input or some other input into the system, you can set up a system where you actually buffer the live stream a little bit, and you let the captions run in on their own. So if they go in separately, we used to tie tune the buffer in YouTube so that our captions would line up. The thing you have to be careful of is if the captions get ahead of the video, people won't believe it's real. So it's really, really important to you have to shadow your captions a little bit behind and make sure that they don't actually catch up. Because if they catch up and get ahead, then people think that the live thing is fake, even though it's just a buffering issue. So it's something to think about. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida writes in, how do you protect yourself and your gear from robbery when shooting on the street?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Air private security. That's what we've always done. Is there's at least in Hollywood and in a lot of production facility, places, or in normal cities, they have private security firms that will hire a guy to stand there with the word security on his shirt. A big beefy guy is going to stand next to your equipment and guard it while you're at lunch or away from your equipment, just to make sure nobody messes with it, and to keep the strange people that wander around on the streets out of the shot.
Good, Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree with Courtney. If you have the budget, if you're a small organization like me, there's a couple of things you do other than putting a couple of beefy PAs near where you're staging your gear. One is don't put a decal on your van carrying the equipment advertising what you are. Just have it blank. That's the best thing to do. Don't draw attention that you have expensive equipment. The same goes for the cases that you're packing your stuff in. Don't say, this is an expensive Sony camera in here. That's the last thing you want to do because you're drawing attention to it. And just basically permits will help too. If you're a small organization, anytime I shoot in a city, I'm getting a shooting permit. It usually requires you have a police officer on staff. And if you have a man in uniform or a woman in uniform, that will discourage any petty theft.
You go ahead, Chris.
There's a very ironic story in San Francisco just recently where a television crew from, Los Angeles came up to shoot a story about car theft and the smash and grabs in San Francisco.
And they hired smash and grabbed.
They hired a security guard to stay with their van the entire time. They were in front of City Hall, as I recall, and the security guard turned away for 15 seconds. All of their IDs, all the gear that wasn't on their shoulders, all was stolen. They had to go to the airport and say, my ID was stolen. Can I please fly home to LA?
Yeah, you have to be. I think you have to be. It's a lot of it. Yeah, you have to be. Especially in cities currently, and again, this is part of the problem. Is not that the cities have become that much more dangerous, but really because the crime has become much more organized. So the folks are getting much better at it, and so you do have to be pretty situationally aware of what you're doing. A lot of times we never pull stuff out if there's not a couple of us there, 2 or 3 people. So we don't do it by yourself because you just can't manage it. If someone grabs something, what are you going to do? Chase after them? You can't, because they notice that, like that you're coming out by yourself and you're stacking cases on a cart. All they have to do is get you to run after one person, and then they take the rest of the stuff with them. So you have to, you want to think about that. All of our cases now have trackers. So obviously they probably know that too, but literally every case that we have, and now more and more of our equipment have Apple trackers in them. And so that has to do with that at least would let us know where they are. Oftentimes, the most use for the trackers is when we ship them. We know where they are. Like we told FedEx said they couldn't find our case, and we were like, it's in the northeast corner of your building. I can see it. I know exactly where your case is, where my case is, and so and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot there was that place that could be. It was like it was a really funny process. So, but as far as protecting yourself, I mean, we've had very little of that, but we do. All of our computers have sub-BIOS level tracking. So we've had people steal our computers, and we know exactly where they are. We know where they are. We know what they're doing. We can even take screen captures of what they're doing with our computers. So a lot of that stuff you can kind of put into the system, and then the biggest thing is insurance for loss, because you will lose things while you do production. That's part of what you're doing. You'll break things, you'll lose things will get stolen, and that's part of doing production. And you want to make sure that you're insuring or budgeting for some shrinkage, because that's a reality of what we do. Next question.
Albie Lopez in San Antonio, Texas writes in, hello, Office Hours panel. What would be the recommended different for you fly packs that can be taking into airlines checked luggage? Some cases don't have much padding and looking for an alternative. And what recommendations for power? Thank you.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I've used these SKB cases for years, and they have this one that is shock mounted. It has these little rubber shocks in the corner, and this is a 4U, so you get a little internal cage that you rack mount your stuff in, and the shock mounts keep it pretty secure. It's ABS plastic. It's not a great strong case. You can break it if you really drop it from really high. Polyethylene cases like the Pelicans, they have this SKB that's designed to drop into a Pelican. I think it comes with the Pelican. This is a 4U. The internal case then comes out of the Pelican and stacks on top of it. That's another solution you can use. And as for power, I have these rack mount power strips, looks like this, that have switches. It has eight outlets on the back. Let's see, where's the back of it? There. It has 8 outlets on the back, and you can individually switch each one, and they're widely spaced enough that most wall warts will fit in them. That's the biggest problem I have, is fitting 4 wall warts. If I want to put 4 wall warts on one switch, I got to put a little tiny breakout that goes to 3 connectors or a cube tap to hit the wall warts off of one switch. But those work good for me. That was from ADJ Power Products, the PC100A.
Yeah, we use a lot of the SKB ones that you can pull out, and we find them to be pretty effective. So they what's nice about them is that you aren't having a case inside of a case. They're already racked up. You're not putting them in there. You just pull them out, and they go up to about 10U. You have to decide how deep you want them to make that actually work. They don't work with really, really deep pieces of hardware, but they work well, and we use a lot of them. What we do also is they've gotten better where they have little feet and little receivers for those feet on the top of them, so they all kind of lock together as you go up. A lot of times we'll run a ratchet strap around them and then close it. And we usually have those with our kit anyway, because that's how we put them onto our rollers when we come in. And so it just makes it like a pretty solid piece of gear there. They also, in hot areas, they're a lot more ventilated because they're not inside of something. So they actually work pretty well for that. We've been pretty happy with them. The key is to really think about, when you put them in, you have to think about support and how that support is going to work with larger items. You have to be very careful with shipping that the items that are long and have a lot of leverage are packed correctly with other items around them to support them, whether that's shelving or whether it's other items, because there's a lot of torque there. And so what ends up happening, just remember that take your case and drop it 4 to 5 feet, and you should know, you should feel okay that that's what's going to happen to your case, because that's what's going to happen to your case. It's going to get thrown off of things and thrown onto things. And so you really have to think about, we worry a lot more about longer things than shorter things because of just inertia and leverage. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that the cantilever effect, you're going to bend the ears on that rack mount stuff if you've got a 16-inch deep piece of equipment. And what I do is I take blocks of ethafoam, which is that fairly stiff polyethylene foam and put it, if there's any gaps between the rack mount piece below or above, and I'll wedge a small block of foam in there to absorb the shock and to support each one. So there's a little stack of foam going all the way up so that the back ends of each of those long items are supported. So when, like he says, it slams it down, the inertia is going to damage the equipment if you don't internally protect each one from the other.
Yeah, and you can see here, like this is like this one is one of those. Whoops, I guess the front one there, the little square ones are those racks, and the rest of them are just coverage. But we use the ratchet straps that you see here as a way to tie them to our. This is a whole bunch of them going to Japan, I think. And by the way, if you're wondering why they're all stacked upside down, is because they sit more level that way on your cart. Go ahead, next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, let's see, there it is. Could you use the Teradek Bolt 6 or another product in the Bolt range in a live sports application to transmit video from boats on a lake, for example, back to the central hub?
You absolutely can. In fact, it actually works relatively well over water. We've typically used, when we do water, we typically use point-to-point microwave. And so you'd be surprised at how far out you can get with a point-to-point, what we call air fiber. It's made by Ubiquiti. And so we point them at the boats there. You could probably use a Teradek to do that. I haven't tried it because, again, when we've done it, we've gone pretty far out, like a distance that the Teradek wouldn't manage, and we've used these point-to-point transmitters to get the high bandwidth back to them that we then plumb typically back into we usually have a Teradek on either end, not the bolts, but the Teradek that'll convert it, I can't think of what the cubes, and we put them on either end to convert it to IP and then back. And then we use the air fibers as the IP connection, and then we convert it back to SDI and put it into a SAT truck. Next question.
Coming in from the QR code, Anawahai from Oahe writes in, I listen to pre-show audio making my deliveries and like its low bandwidth stream. Hasn't been on until just before showtime for most of the past month and no other audio for a third Sunday. Looks like someone decided to end this play out for people. Why?
We're that's more of a Sunday conversation. If you ask it again on Sunday, we'll deal with it more. But yeah, we decided we're trying to kind of clean up the pre-show, and as we clean up that pre-show, you'll have us turn it back on again. So anyway, as we clean up the pre-show, we decided was not always ready for broadcast, and so we're working on tightening that a little bit. And as we tighten that up, we'll put it back on. Next question.
David in London comes in with a QR code. If coding is not your forte, can ChatGPT help design your video production website entirely from start to finish?
Go ahead, Brent.
I'm not sure that I would rely on ChatGPT to do that for you. It is possible to do most of the steps. But Google's getting better at detecting AI-generated content, so you might not see a lot of SEO benefit. Plus, you'll have to still be able to know how to make edits to, in case ChatGPT gets something wrong and there's inaccuracies, and still be able to place like your logo, your color scheme if you have a corporate color scheme. And because you do video production, you're going to want to know how to add in a demo reel. But a lot of the online platforms and even like WordPress allows you to add AI-generated content and to manipulate the visuals in order to pretty quickly get a website up and running.
Go, John.
Brett did a fantastic job articulating. That's exactly correct. So as a web developer for clients, you'd be surprised how much time I waste trying to get a client to write the About Us section. I wait weeks and weeks for that content sometimes. And now with the ChatGPT, I'm able to generate a lot of that content for them. All they have to do is approve that. It's not going to do soups to nuts, but it definitely helps you with writer block and getting stuff started.
Next question.
Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. used the QR code to ask, is there a way to have multiple people assigned to YouTube's two-factor login authentication?
Not that I know of. Typically, YouTube needs to know that somebody is accountable for what's going up there. So they want to have, they want to be able to talk to, especially if you're doing live streams or other things. They want it to be very specific. So typically, there is not a way to do two. Now, the way we do it, of course, if somebody else has to log in, you can have that person, another person, be a manager or admin for the site. You can have multiple managers for the site. So that's one way to do it. You can also have, but as far, so that's the way to manage that. Or you have one person who's available when you log in to give you the two-factor because it's asking for a number or something like that. But managing or processing your managers to have different people have access is really the key to that, as opposed to one person managing it. Next question.
Coming in from Mitchell Patera in Poland, can ChatGPT-4 turn an article into a script for a documentary or journalistic film? If so, do you have any advice on how to do it best?
It could. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to win any awards. I've had it write scripts for me. They're, I will admit, they're as good as some of the stuff I've seen on Netflix. They're definitely like the scripts are. I've seen some stuff. The scripts are not great, I've asked it to do things. I asked it to do one time I wanted a romantic comedy with two slugs in a high school, aquarium, but it's a romantic comedy shot by Michael Bay. And so there was like it gave me the most classic like romantic comedy thing, but with a race in the middle that had two slugs racing on some kind of thing, and there's a whole process. And so it did all of those things well. And I thought, well, this isn't a very good script. But then I thought, is it as good as stuff I've seen on Saturdays or on Netflix? And I was like, nah, maybe. so it's not going to win you any awards, but it could give you something that you could have fun with. I think that for class projects for kids in high school, it could be a really good one if they're not studying script writing, if they're just doing filmmaking. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, what brand would you recommend for a 4K field monitor? I know Guy used to recommend the UPerfect range, but I'm open to others.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I have a few suggestions in order of price, because you didn't mention price. I would use a Sony if I could afford it, but you'll find it a Sony 24-inch 4K monitor is going to cost you about $20,000. Going down in price line, I would go to a Flanders, an Atomos, and a Blackmagic is my final choice.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, small HD, I see a lot of those on set these days,
Yeah.
So they seem to be using a lot of those. They can get pricey. The OLEDs, some of the ones that we saw in the Apple shoot, I checked out the price on them. They were $12,000 to $15,000 each for a 15-inch.
Small HD started so small. Like there was all really inexpensive little monitors, and suddenly it grew into something else. The ones we see the most often on set are the small HDs, followed by the Atomos. I'm not saying that they're the best or whatever, but they're the most common. So Atomos or small HD is everywhere, and then Atomos is behind that, and then we see a lot of Blackmagic stuff. We rarely see Sony and Flanders or other things like that in the field because they're really sensitive, but we do see a lot of them when we're shooting in other places, and I will say they are amazing. Next question.
Eric Kurtz in Hartford, Connecticut writes in, concerned that NDI-HX video from a Sony SRG A40 to a TriCaster 1 Pro could be out of sync with Dante audio. So I want to use the SDI or HDMI camera outputs and send NDI full Speed HQ instead. Is the Magewell Pro Convert the best bet? SDI or HDMI?
It's any time you convert to NDI, you're going to lose some. It doesn't matter what format. If the audio is going separately and you have some sources coming in with over baseband, they're going to be ahead of the NDI. The NDI takes anywhere from I think about 15 to 20 milliseconds, which is less than a frame, so maybe that's fine. But the HX I think is like 150 to 200 milliseconds behind, so it's definitely a lot more compression time. I would typically go to SDI. I have a Magewell Pro Connect, and they work well. So I think that is that could be a good source there. Again, if you want absolute sync, then you're really looking at gen-locked SDI. But if you're trying to just close the gap, then the NDI full should work. And again, I find that the Magewells are a little expensive, but they are solid pieces of hardware. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida writes in, warning, set Zoom minimum client to 5.15.5 or later, or Zoom ISO will not work. We had set minimum client more recent than 5.15.5, and Zoom ISO could no longer connect. The reason was that Zoom's SDK is dragging behind Zoom production version.
The Zoom minimum client to, well, the 5.15.5 is really old, I think. I mean, I think that's an old update. So I would definitely push it forward from there. But I don't know exactly. I mean, I think that's a last year update, if I'm correct. I mean, because I'm on 2.16 something or other now. And I don't think they've done that many updates. And so I'm not sure exactly when it is, but that's really long in the tooth. So yeah. And we've relaxed a little bit, but oftentimes we've in the past pushed this one. I know in the past when we were doing the webinar with everyone, we pushed forward we were about 2 updates behind the new version where we just force everybody to go that way to avoid a lot of compatibility issues. Next question.
Yeah, 5.16.6 is the current one. Let's see. Hasmut Kajar in Cape Town, South Africa writes in, I attach my iPhone 14 and 15 to a car mag stand. Often takes a screenshot when I'm driving. Super annoying. Is there a solution?
I'm assuming that it's doing that because you're hitting the buttons. You're hitting the buttons on it that do it. So the question is, it's a mag stand though. Like it must be just the way you're holding it. I know that Steve Jobs said that about the cell phone thing, but it's just the way you're holding it. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say the same thing. It's a magnetic stand. Some of those pinchy stands are really annoying. Watch your hands carefully as you're doing it, Hasmuk. Maybe it's because you're.
Yeah, I can't figure out why it would use the magnetic stand as a way to.
I know that I use. Oh, is it possible?
Isn't there a gesture for screenshot? Maybe that's turned on, and he's making some gesture.
Well,
shake.
The gesture is put phone in stand. No,
turn that off in accessibility.
Is it possible that you've turned on the back tap button? There is the ability to create a command for back tap. I don't know if you can take photo to back tap, but is that maybe it's getting a tap as it snaps on? I'd look at that.
Go, Jason.
Yeah, Fenwick I think has the most probable solution, but yeah, also if you hit the top volume up and power button and you did an upgrade from the 13 to the 14 and the 14 to the 15, you may still be retaining the screenshot as top volume up and power. So if you're holding it like this when you put it in, that could also do it.
I did find it. I didn't realize that you can just shake your iPhone and have it turn off snooze. Just go or put it on snooze by just picking it up and going, and I did it because I dropped it and it just turned off. I was like, oh, there you go. So
what happens when you throw it across the room at a wall?
I believe that's the undo function.
That's the super mute.
Yeah.
It captures a picture of you and sends it to the Genius bar to let them know that you damaged it on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. By the way, because we have a minute or two here. Oh, wait, there's another one here. Let's go ahead and throw that one in. It's out of order. Anyway, but let's see here. Yeah, go ahead. Next question.
There we go. Yes, Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California writes in, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 promotes its use as a webcam, but can it be connected to a switcher? And he includes the link from DJI's website.
You know, if it has an HDMI out, it can, and I don't know if it does or not. I believe it does. I think it's got a micro HDMI. It doesn't have any kind of HDMI out. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but if somebody calls it a webcam, let's face it, that language usually lends itself toward a USB camera.
Right, but other DJI stuff has had HDMI outputs, and this one doesn't. And so so maybe not. You just have to look at whether it has an HDMI output. We did find that if you connect it, you don't get all the cool controls. So we thought, you'll be able to connect it and then use it as use the webcam, but be able to control the head. And we thought that might make it better than the Link. And the answer is no, because there's no control. Once you connect it as a UVC camera, you have to kind of literally move it around with your hand. So so that has turned out to not be as good as we expected that to work.
And let's face it, there's not a lot of people on the planet that consider their 6K Blackmagic a webcam. So
I'm not using a 6K Blackmagic as a webcam.
I know. Whatever.
I am.
No, and Mickey
saying
said you can control it with the hardware controls, but that's not useful as a webcam because you can't reach them. It's not a. Anyway, I think that they need to be able to set up a software interface for that. If I'm going to plug it in, they need to match what the link. If they're going to call it a webcam, they need to do what the link is doing, or the OBSBot, which is have a piece of software that lets us control the camera. A quick reminder, of course, is that the weekend we're going to be, if you are interested in being a panelist, go to officehours.global/panelist. And the best time to test that is on Sundays and Saturdays and Tuesdays. You can come in for training at noon Pacific Standard Time, and that goes out in the emails. Let's jump into the second hour. Welcome back to the second hour. And we're doing our, kind of quarterly update on what we're doing with the website and how it's, where it's progressing and where we're hoping to go, and looking really for your input on what that actually looks like. And to give us kind of an overview of that, I'm going to hand it off to Josh to talk a little bit about, where the website is and where we're going with it. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I'm kind of bringing forth the representation from the web team. We've had the website for quite a long time. It predates me, but I had a little bit of a historical synopsis of it. Of course, Kenn Jordan was instrumental in bringing about the website and the theme that we use. It's something that we curate the different themes and hero cards for the show. And Kenn had done a web lab where he was able to recruit some help for some other folks to help maintain the lab. And the other folks that, if you're having questions about the web lab, Simon, Ray, and Roy have also been taking up that mantle of keeping the website updated. They've been able to introduce a lot of automation into the website to make it easier to maintain, and also have some capability to bring on some other folks to have contributions to the website. So in addition to just maintaining the website, we also have different teams that have been in charge of some of the content. So we have some of the representation here from our thumbnail team. So folks that live while we're having the show are able to pick up the thumbnail and choose that. It's a process that's fairly simple right now, but we're looking at ways of making that a little more complex, of adding a little more text and things to have a little more complex input as far as the look and the way things work for that. But we're also interested in taking people's suggestions about where we'd like to go, what's missing that we could be adding to the website. And so people that are interested in giving suggestions, of course, we're interested in suggestions. We're even more interested if you'd like to to carry out your suggestions and be a volunteer to help. Some people have development skills. We do have Brett here, so it's helpful to have him here on the panel to have a professional web developer point of view as far as managing what things are possible, et cetera. But also we have different opportunities for people that would like to create different content. We'd like to do a few more things. We can talk more about it in our questions, but we would like to add more things as far as doing some preparation, doing some field work to add things to the website, people doing research, collecting profiles on our guests and panelists. So those are some of the things I can seed about requests that we might have, and some suggestions about how people that might want to help out, different facilities we might want to add to the website at a future time.
Yeah, and so and I think that one of the questions that and I think some stats came up. One of the things we do work on a lot is also accessibility, and Laura Thompson I think has the first question. So let's go ahead and read that question, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Oh, we lost Jason. Mitch, can you read the next question?
It's from Laura Thompson in Beaumont, Texas. Kenn Jordan and I did a demonstration of the accessibility of the Office Hours website on 8/20/21. At that time, the score was around 97%. What is the current score, and how does that impact decisions for the website?
And I think that the current score here is 92%, which is actually much higher than most websites out there. So we definitely pay a fair bit of attention to that. This is so I think that, I think it's unique for us to spend as much time for the size that we are. A lot of larger corporate sites will spend time on that type of thing. Sorry, I got lost in my panel here. Hold on. Speaking of websites here, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, our website has, to the credit of those that have prepared it, have been very focused. I would say industry leading in accessibility. There has been somewhat of a hit taken on. We've migrated it from different hosting, and there's been some changes in the panel that we use, the plan or the template that we've used, that have knocked it back a few points. But for comparison, I believe the note from one of our website folks mentioned that the top 20 on Google are only 66% as far as accessibility with disabilities. And about 90% of websites are inaccessible at all with people with disabilities. Of course, it's something that we're interested in continuing to make as a comfortable experience for everyone visiting the website, and in particular interest to make sure that no one's left out in being able to reach the website. So I know Laura's been very helpful in giving feedback, and feedback is helpful as far as helping us to progress.
And we have a lot of folks that are working on the website here today. So if you have things you guys want to add, go ahead and put your hand up into the or throw some stuff up. And if you have suggestions or things that you'd like to see from that, one of the things that we're really thinking about is as we go forward with the website is really thinking about what we do on the front end and versus what we do on the back end. So there are there's kind of a discussion internally of and let us know what you guys think. And you can use the comments. You can use the question system to add comments, so you can give us your feedback on that as well. But one of the things that we're looking at right now is when you join is to be a little bit more clear and welcoming to just, hey, this is what we are. This is what we do. It's kind of a little bit more of a shiny front end, a little bit better signups, so on and so forth on the front end, and make that very flexible and easy for us to update. And then have another piece of that that is going to be more of a, if you're already in the system, these are the places for you to go. And so and we still make those look nice, but we don't have to. They're kind of managed in almost a separate process. Is one of the things that we're thinking about right now, is so that we can kind of keep evolving what we need internally as a group, as opposed to and then have the front end being kind of a little bit more of a forward facing system than what we've had kind of in the back. And so I think that I'm really thinking hard about that. Part of it is just wanting to make it really flexible so that we can update it quickly. But then be able to put heavier things. One of the things we've talked about in the past is being able to have, for instance, there's a kind of a system by which right now, and this has been the case since we started, is that we don't know who's going to show up every morning. we turn this thing on, and we just go, and then people arrive. Who's gonna be here, which is, by the way, kind of amazing. It's if you really think about it, the fact that we've done this over 1,000 times, and every single time enough people have shown up to do a show. It's pretty kind of crazy. But what we'd like to do is start working on the back end of having it be a system by which we can invite people to those, let them know what's happening, and then on the website let you know. Like if you go up and see this website, you would have, then we would have said, the list here a couple days ahead of time or the day of. Here are all the people, and also giving them each a little page, the panelists a little page that they can have. That is like, this is what they know, and this is their area of expertise, and this is what they do, and this is, like all that stuff. So you get a sense of, what those things are, for every show, and we think that would be a huge value to the viewers as well as the panelists. And so those are things that we're kind of thinking through. I do have a hope that at some point we start doing. I look at Wirecutter as kind of like short articles about things that are interesting. I think are something that we could do. We just need to, again, if you're interested in content as well as web development, you should reach out to us, because we're interested in looking for folks that want to do content that's related to our project. Another thing that I look at all these links we put into Discord every day, and I think we should put an RSS feed out of this is what we discussed every day, and an RSS to all those links, so that people just get to. If you just, for me, I use the program called Flipboard. If you had a Flipboard, you would just be able to every day see the 30 things that we talked about during the thing and flick through them as you want to. Go ahead. Next question.
Coming in from me, Jason Bache in Albuquerque, New Mexico. What makes for a great still frame?
Go ahead, Adrian.
Well, a great still frame is one that represents what the show's about. So if we look back at last week where Chris was Fenwicking audio, then we picked up a frame of Chris looking quite content at the end of that show that everything had worked, and we then put it together with a super source of the stuff on his desk. So that represented the show quite nicely, and we want to represent what Office Hours is about. So we want a nice, smiling, welcoming, happy frame, because that's our community. So, and we want to make people look the best that they possibly can. If you'd like to see what the process is, I have a wee bit of a demo here of what goes on to
absolutely
make the thumbnail. Please apologies for the Zoom screen share, but anyway. So as we go through the show, I usually sit in Makana and see what the questions are coming up, so that there's anything in there that might possibly be interesting, and we'll get some good pictures from. As you can see here, we had a bit of a comment this morning. So once we get to something, then we roll through in YouTube, and then we just frame through until we get something that looks pretty close. And we'd like to see some eyes and a good smile, and nothing too much. And then you'll drop into there. So that's the one that I've picked up for this. And then we go and upload it into the website. One there. And of course, live demos are always the best thing to do, aren't they?
So this is something that we've built, right?
This is Simon's upload. So originally this was quite a janky process. So you would end up going in to write some HTML code, pushing files in various different ways, and then this is considerably easier than it was. And once we get it up there, then we need to get it to something around 30K, because we want nice, fast loading on the website, so we want lightweight on the website. And then we stick in the name, which is the alt text for readers, of course. And then we go publish. Now, and what I'd normally do with a show is have a thumbnail up within the first 20 minutes, which is basically a safety frame. And that then gives us something so that if there's no other decent pictures during the rest of the show, then we go with that one, and then just keep monitoring it. And then if something comes up, then we just replace that as we go through. Quite often we've got to work around lower thirds, QR codes and things, so we'll take a clean plate, so whatever somebody's wearing in the day, it doesn't matter what their expression is, and then we can layer that over and wipe out the QR code or the lower third if we need to get a decent shot. But
That's great.
It works.
That's great. Josh? Can't hear you, Josh.
Whoops. I just wanted to comment on Adrian's demo there. What what we've built, what Simon Ray's actually put forward, is a system whereby we don't have to expose the innards of the website, but we have a contribution portal that we've made. And it does require, if you'd like to help out with the folks on the web team, this is one of the tasks that some of our smaller crew does. It is helpful to do that. The folks that are available, sort of those that are available while the show is in progress, because we like to get a timely photo up to be able to do that particular crew. But a lot of other things that we're looking for help for are sort of offline, whenever we're not having the show, where you don't really necessarily, not really time conscious. We basically just have a deadline, between next week or whenever the next guest is coming on.
Next, go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, I would just like to talk a little bit about what Adrian mentioned in passing. Advice to panelists: what makes for a great still frame? Look at the camera. Position your camera so that you're not looking up at the ceiling to see the monitor. And smile, laugh, use your hands. Guys like Jason are great because he's always so animated, and it makes for a really interesting still frame. So
that's the guidance for us.
Yes, yes.
To be better simple. And one of the things we found as we started using the QR code is that we have to be careful about how long the QR code stays up, because of course we can't, anytime the QR code's up, we can't do a screen capture, or it's much harder. So it's really important that, so we learned, we have to limit the amount of time that QR code is up because of that. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, amplifying what Cindy said, I've noticed on my YouTube feed that almost all the thumbnails have people with their mouth wide open for some reason. I guess it gets more clicks. You see, really strange expressions. I guess it attracts more clicks. I'm not sure, but it seems to be a trend.
So a lot of the trends follow Mr. Beast, and I think Mr. Beast made it very popular to do these kind of very excited looks. And it's funny when it does. We were taking a photo with a creator, and they said, "Okay, smile," and we all took a photo, and then they said, "Fake YouTube smile," and we all went. And it was actually a funny photo, but it was the fact that we all knew what it was, it was that you open it up. But now we think it's going back the other way now, because Mr. Beast has decided to just smile. Like he's not doing as much of the big wide open thing. So everyone's like, now that Jimmy's doing that, we'll go the other direction. So anyway, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, and it should be noticed too that we actually have a pair of thumbnails. If you go onto the website, and once we see Adrian's popped his in, and that's live right now for our show, once we pop it in, we'll have YouTube actually does a different thumbnail, is currently in the process too. So you may see a couple different takes on it as well.
And we broke the cardinal rule of these, which may have been lost in the thing. Was the one cardinal rule I had was that I should never be on the thumbnail. So anyway, that's a whole other thing. Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman, this time from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, writes in, how can we make the search function better? I looked for a few this morning, and it was not super successful.
Go ahead, Brett.
That's a really good point. One example that I've talked to Josh about in the past is several weeks back, there was a really, really good show about NDI with experts, and I had to watch it 3 times just to absorb the whole show. But if I just go to the Office Hours website and do a search for NDI, it brings up a few different links, but I'm unable to actually determine where is that episode. So being able to tag each episode with the context of perhaps who is the guest, or what various topics or equipment that's discussed would be super powerful. And then being able to do like a predictive search, like when you go to Google or on your phone and it figures out what you're typing. To be able to give people some of the more popular search results would be, I think, helpful as well.
Go, Josh.
Yeah, those are some helpful suggestions for maybe future development. As far as the Plaluk's question, as far as specifically to search, we are tracking a couple of known issues as far as search, and so feedback to the web team is helpful to sort of lock down the base functionality that we currently have up.
Yeah, and one of the things you're going to see me continue to work on doing as best I can, and we're trying to figure this out. So you've probably seen the fact that we fade to black at the end of the hour, between the 2 hours, and that went from being very rocky to being fairly stable. I mean, we miss it every once in a while, but we're getting to the point where that's become a norm. Part of that is because we're working on automating the record system so that basically it just goes up to the top of the hour and just cuts the second hour out and packages it and puts it up on YouTube. I mean, that's where we're trying to go to there. The same thing that's happening for the first hour, or not the same thing, but a similar thing, which is that we are working towards, you'll hear me say next question, and I'm efforting my ability to take a space there for a second and then say clearly next question. And what we're working towards is the ability for AI to look at that and go, oh, that's a new question. And I'm going to grab the next thing that's we're going to remove next question, grab the rest of that, grab the question, and then basically atomize the first hour. So the first hour becomes cut up into little pieces, put up on YouTube as individual shorts, or not shorts, but individual little videos that are all there, and then make a rolling playlist. And that actually, I believe, will actually make it easier to search for them because they'll all have the question in them, they'll have the title in it, they'll have exactly, potentially somewhere down the path, we could even have who answered the question. That could be driven back from our system, because we know who raised their hands, right? So to answer the question. And so there's a bunch of data there that we're working on to be able to make this, easier based on YouTube. Now, there are, in previous versions of Mokana, we had more tools related to that. We just didn't need them as much. And so we didn't continue to develop them, and they were a lot of work to develop. But they were basically using the SDK or the API for YouTube to control the playhead, and we knew where all the questions were. And that next question helps us do that. So that's why with hosts, sometimes they get little notes like, say next question. Like, I don't want you to say anything else, and don't blur into it. Just do something to hit next question. And that's what we're trying to, and even I'm trying to work on that. But that's going to help make some of the stuff searchable, some of the searchability actually easier if we do. There's software development, hardware development, and that's a little bit of wetware development of making that actually work. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, would we be able to add searchability for past questions?
Yeah, and that's what we're working on. That's what I kind of over-answered the last one and answered your question. But we are working on making it searchable. I mean, the goal is eventually is that we will not go into the past. So we're always developing forward, we're not going to try to figure out how to handle the 55,000 questions that we've already answered in office hours. But we will, as we develop the system, the idea is to build something that you could theoretically, there's a couple pieces to that. One is us tracking all of that information, the other and atomizing it and making it, you would find it, but also, was that a good answer? And so one of the things that we're hoping to do is you probably, if you look at it, I think that you can select in the chat, if you're in Mokana right now, you can select the question and give it a heart. That's a vote. That was a good answer. We haven't really published it because we have nowhere for it to go right now. But the idea is that, the producers will tell us that was a great answer, that wasn't a great answer, et cetera, over time. And that helps us not only give you, here's all the times we answered something about the mixed pre, but they're ranked in the order of relevancy and then ranked in the order of quality. Because when you answer 55,000 questions, we might have answered the same question or similar questions a couple times. Next question.
Coming in for me, Jason Bache in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Does YouTube make use of image metadata descriptors when ingesting a still frame?
I don't know. I don't know if it does. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
I've been informed that YouTube does tend to favor icons that feature text. So that is somewhat an SEO advantage.
Next question.
Tlalak Lopez Waterman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania writes in, what SEO is done? When people have questions about topics we cover and type them into Google, do we pop up?
What's interesting is I don't know how much of our website pops up, and I don't know what we're doing with SEO there. Maybe some of the guys can raise their hand and let us know. But I will say that a lot of our videos show up from YouTube. We show up more and more often inside of, like, if you're doing a search for a variety of things, I'm noticing, at least on my search results, that I'm seeing our videos show up more and more on YouTube. And one of the things that this is not really it's kind of a website thing, but we're looking for products that we think might be popular or products that are interesting to us that we know well, that are not well represented in YouTube as a opportunity for us to build some training for it. So you saw me fiddle with a little bit of, Chris, on our website, or not on website, on YouTube, Chris fiddling with a little bit of the how to do the his video on how to use the Korg and how to use all those things. And you see my little one on Keynote. This is me just playing with the idea. Like, I'm not trying to do anything there. I'm just trying to see, like, and what I will say is that we're probably going to get more aggressive about that, because what we're seeing right now is, since we started releasing those videos, and there's a bunch of other factors that are going on, so we're not sure if there's a causal relationship yet. We're seeing kind of an overall arch. If you look at our average number of subscribers, it's kind of going like, since we started releasing them, it's kind of going like, maybe not quite that steep, but more like this, up. And it's been like this for years. so we think that there's a positive correlation between producing some VOD video, some straight videos, as well as what we're doing here. Yeah, go, Josh.
Yeah, and our site, as it's constructed, is organized so that Google can see the shows and the show titles. There is an update that's being pushed out soon that might be able to update the way that SEO penetrates a little deeper.
Next question.
John Preto in Las Vegas, Nevada writes in, I can share my prototypes and thoughts.
Go for it, John.
Okay, so I had a meeting at 8:00, but I think that this is more important. So I've got about 8 relational databases that tie all this data together. I do have a community prototype up and running. I don't want to share it yet, but everything that Alex just mentioned earlier in the show is built into this prototype. So anything related to a panelist, what his specialties are, his equipment gear, all of his gear could be listed up there easily. So his community page could be completely enumerated. That's easy stuff. The database related to every show, a screenshot of all the shows, the dates, all the metadata related, guest info. So every time a guest comes on, I've got a database for each one of those guests with screenshots, multiple appearances. Paul, when Paul
and
came,
you can't show them to us yet?
I could show it to you now. I'll run out of time.
Okay.
I've sent you a video.
When did you send me that
Alex,
video?
At our 1000th episode. I'll send you a video of what I've got now, and I'll send you a link to the process. So I've got a lot of this stuff in works already, and so I'm super comfortable and optimistic of moving to the future. Except right now, I got to run to another meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you, John, and we'll talk. We'll have everybody talk together and get this kind of figured out. That's great. One of the things I want to do is we were talking about earlier is have the front end of the site be something that is potentially even a slightly separate URL, set up where we can kind of develop that, and we're really thinking about that, and then we can have a lot more of the heavy lifting on another part of the site that isn't as we're not worried about it as much, so that that front end stays stable and the back end can keep on evolving faster. Go ahead, Josh.
Contributions like John's are extremely helpful when you're able to mock something up and show different layouts and things. We can evaluate that overall. And inevitably, there are some ways that we're collecting data now, just in the regular documents that we have. Some people are doing a lot more verbose data collection, like John is as well. So connecting the data that we already have, as well as where we'd like to go, and having, for those that are able to do like a mock-up of things, of course, having regular suggestions of things, of saying, hey, I'd like this or like that is great. But if you can do a mock-up or show exactly, what your suggestion or idea is, and if you have the capability to do that, that definitely goes a lot further.
Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania writes in, automation can be useful, but it can also be felt by the end user. How do you keep the humanity in the website while making it easier to maintain?
Yeah, go, Josh.
Well, there's people involved. A lot of the steps of what we do. I know that because often I'm one of those people that greets guests, pulls them onto the stage for when they're doing things. We have a whole PSC crew that basically white glove, is able to greet people. As far as visitors of the website, having contributions of people making content for that is something it feels more organic than something that's procedurally generated. Although being able to procedurally generate a lot of things that are just repetitive means that we can actually focus our efforts and our volunteer hours on things that are intentional.
Yeah, I do think that as we move forward, as we grow, there'll be a couple things that are automated, like getting the screen up quickly for what is a more automated process. I do think that had a lot of conversations with people who build thumbnails that eventually we're going to and if you're interested, reach out to Josh or myself or both. Eventually we'll have a thumbnail team and we will handcraft the thumbnails. Like if it's just a matter of having people to do it. Right now we don't have the people to dedicate every day that I'm gonna actually, or a couple people to actually handcraft the thumbnails so that they are but that takes time to do. But if you're interested in doing that, and it's a great Photoshop process, Photoshop or Keynote, but there's not, the automation will get us a long way, and it's really important that we do the automation that we have right now, so that because we're doing something every single day, and we are a volunteer organization, so having a capability of doing that. But I do think that eventually we'll probably end up building, a thumbnail team is necessary for also the pre-show, because right now, before we do the show, it's just a gear in front of it, and so having thumbnails for every one of those shows, that is designed and put together. So if it's something that, I think that's, we have to kind of think about that. But I think one of my goals is that those start to, really get, are more, set up, inside of the system, so you can really see something there. And so, but I do think that it is hard to get out that. We probably put more human resources into what we do than probably any other Zoom-based show I've ever seen. There's somebody actually cutting a show. There's people actually greeting people. There's probably more people involved with what we do than most. But for the web page, a lot of times we've been, working on, really making it efficient. And again, I think the thumbnails, as we want to grow the YouTube channel, and I'm talking less about the web page and more about the YouTube channel, we will probably get, if we have a crew, 3, 4, 5 people that are willing to work on it, we would probably get more aggressive about those thumbnails as far as how to put them together. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, Alex, you mentioned AI segmenting the questions. Would GPT-4 or another similar large language model be able to do that?
Yes. Yes, they can. And especially as we look at the GPT, these little apps that are getting built, we think that there's a lot of opportunity there to build those out. And so right now, what I'm trying to do is lay the groundwork by figuring out the wetware solutions to make it easiest for the AI solution to manage it. So I'm managing how I ask the questions and how the other host asks the questions, so that we're able to manage that. And again, there's this back and forth of delivering. Eventually, what we need to do is we need to deliver the question, the text. Who asked it, who raised their hand, the order in which they raised their hand. All those things are data that we have, and we'll have to marry that back to the metadata that's there. And so just that project is probably a whole team in itself to figure that out. But it's definitely something we'd like to do as we go into next year. And I do think it'll make a radical difference to how that all looks. And to get back to the automation that has already been shown around thumbnails. Remember that we might have to build something with thumbnail. This is where automation happens. Like the main show may have its own thumbnail that someone handcrafts and works on. But if we're producing 25 or 26 thumbnails a day, then we're going to need to have the tools that the team has worked on to build those out quickly and easily. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama, PA writes in how the YouTube chapters are being implemented right now and how can this help for the website? Does this feed any value to the Office Hours website directly?
Well, I know that it feeds value to the YouTube audience because we definitely get comments when it's not there, and so. But it right now it's just a text file. It's just a matter of having those. And I'm not. Mukana generates that data, I believe, and then that data is formatted again to make that actually happen. I always feel like it's a success in delegation that I don't actually know how that works. Like I know how I do chapters, which is you put the time code there and it works, but the exact function of how that works but I do think that we can feed some of that data back in. Again, there's a lot of data we're generating, and we're just not tying it all back together yet. Next question.
Mickey Makachor in Manila, the Philippines writes in, what process and policies does the website team have in terms of users and individuals' privacy and gathering permissions to one's image and likeness on the site?
Go ahead, Josh.
There's a privacy policy on the site, and it's GDPR compliant.
Yeah, and as far as we assume, and maybe we shouldn't, but we assume that if you're on a show on YouTube, we're taking things from something that is already publicly available. So and I think that I don't think we haven't had any pushback yet. So we'll see. Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington writes in, how can we use something like Opus to improve the site search? And he includes Opus.pro/learning-center.
We've looked at Opus, and it hasn't been quite the right one-to-one relationship of what we're trying to actually get done. But Opus, is Opus.ai is definitely a site that could work. So we've been researching it. It hasn't been a direct lineup for us yet. But and again, what we need are people who are willing to jump into that and do some research on it. A lot of times, it's a volunteer process, so we get as much done as we can. So that one's a deeper water to do research in. Next question.
Tlalak Lopez Waterman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania writes in, we talk about YouTube views and concurrent viewers, but what is the trend of website usage?
And I actually, I pay attention mostly to the YouTube usage and less to the website usage, but I think that as we start to evolve what we're doing there, I think we'll spend more time on it. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, concur. We're not currently tracking that, but that's a good idea. Maybe it's something we can look more into.
Next question.
Coming in for me, Jason Beish in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Which ML large language models exist to properly examine an image and turn out metadata descriptors?
Yeah, I think that the issue, what I would say is that we have so much metadata related to what we're actually doing. I don't know if we need to do any image analysis. Go ahead, Brett.
There are definitely providers out there that can do that. The one that comes to mind is Clarify. It's CLARIFAI, and they do specifically that with metadata descriptions and computer vision. So it's out there.
Next question.
Jason Robert Shaw in Sarasota, Florida writes in #OHG, #OHGlobal, #OHGLO, #OHGlobe. Is there an official hashtag for Office Hours Global?
I don't know if there is. I don't know how that's added. Are those all the ones that are added to our? It might be that we just there's a shotgun approach there. These are all the things you might tag it with. I'm fine with hashtags. I will say that I work on a lot of social campaigns, and I have a fairly dim view of the value of hashtags, and so I allow them to be added to it. But from the data that I have from much larger campaigns than the one we're doing, I find them to be not as, it's not something I pay much attention to. If people want to put it in, it's fine. But I work on some pretty large projects, and the hashtags have a very limited impact on the success of those projects beyond a lot of other things. So that's my 2 cents on that. So usually it has to do with quality and who's sharing it and how it's shared and everything else. I mean, the hashtags are, everything adds to what's searchable, but it's probably less than 10% of the impact. So for those, and so I tend to pay attention to 90% impacts. Next question.
Robert Sababade in Poland writes in, I use Opus.pro. It is good to give us a draft. After getting the draft, we have a process to input the file into DaVinci Resolve and use a script to mark the required sections. And we format and render the individual shots in the format and that's the end. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, again, I think that there's a lot of this stuff we're going to be using AI not so much to generate content, but to process content. So processing questions, processing, the data, everything else. This is something that it's not only that it would be expensive or hard to do in a human way, it would not be possible. On larger projects that we use, Commenda or the sister app, Commenda or Makana. Those are the two they have slightly different features. We sometimes deal with thousands of questions in very short periods of time, thousands of questions in less than 20 minutes. And then we're really thinking hard about how do we process those questions, and how do we find the perfect question for the show when we have, I've got to find 12 questions out of 6,000. I've had that problem, the great news is that when you do something where people are passionate, usually I can grab anything out of there. I mean, every 10 questions is a question there's a question I could use. So it's not that bad, but we would love to be able to be, we think that there's a huge opportunity there to refine that further. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah. And, one thing we try to do is manage the expectation based on the resources that we have to maintain a particular feature or service. Obviously, the more folks that are able to support a service, the more that we're able to to support different things. But it's difficult if we start doing a particular thing and then stop, or discontinue it later. Then people feel a little more let down if we start doing something and then cut off at some point.
It's a huge consideration, just so you know, if you wonder, why don't we do this feature? It's mostly that we look at sustainability as part of the feature set. So you can see, we've had some comments on turning off the pre-show, which we should turn back on again. But we turned it off, and, people had built up expectations based on that they get to listen to it there, and now they're not able to, and now we're hearing about it. And so we are very sensitive to, if we're going to start, when we look at what we're going to add to the website, what we're going to add as a service, what we're going to add to anything else, and it's going to be publicly facing, we definitely have there's a conversation of, who's going to do this, and how are they going to do it, and how long will it take them to do it, and can they do that every day, or every week, or every month, or whatever that is. And it does limit how fast we go, because we're definitely not hey, let's just try, we're not moving fast and breaking things as much, and so we're really thinking about what we can do. And that's been the case for office hours in general. Even if you look at the show, there's a lot of cool things that we could do with this show. I just don't know if we can do it every day and we figured out what we think we can do every day. Josh?
Yeah, we had the question before on, having the human touch versus the automated. Having the automated or the AI to accelerate, to do a lot of the the programmatic work, it pushes forward the volunteer hour or contribution forward to where we could do things. Being able to find lots of different points inside the content of the shows, or be able to do things really quickly, means that we can spend more time really picking and curating between what's been suggested with the AI and moving forward. So setting up systems that amplify and push us forward is really helpful for those different systems that are available. That it's something that we're not going to completely turn over to AI, but it's something that makes we can go further with less input.
Any final comments from our team I don't think we have any more questions here. So we've got a little open time there. But if you're interested in being part of the website and interested in being part of the development, definitely reach out to Josh. Again, one thing to know is that if you think that something's important that we're doing, then if you think, oftentimes we'll come back to you and say, well, it'd be great if you worked on it. so you can have ideas. And don't feel free to say, especially in RFIs, in other discussions, things that you want. You don't have to do anything. We're not going to ask you to. But if you think that there's something there for us to look at, definitely put those into Discord. Let us see those things. We're always processing. We may not get to them for a year or 6 months or a month. So you have to be kind of patient with us to do that. But it's not that we're not listening. It's just that we're managing the resources that we have. So that's that's something to kind of, think about there. If you are interested in being part of it, whether it's, and again, it doesn't have to be a web resource person. You could be a person who wants to work on the graphic design, wants to work on the thumbnails, wants to work on content, research, process, all those things. Those are things that are available to you to be part of. It's not, the design is very important, but it's not the only thing that's required to keep a website going. So there's a lot of content, graphics, other things that are available and will become more available, and just letting us know that you have time and you're interested, and then we can start talking about your skill sets. And even if you're just getting started, I will tell you, as someone who, most of the things that I got good at was because I had to do it every day, all day, to make that happen, or every day. So, like, for instance, if you want to get good at Photoshop or get good at design layout or whatever, doing thumbnails, doing a thumbnail every day, for instance, and building that out and designing it is a great way to just turn the skill. The first couple will take a long time, and then after that, you get kind of fast at it, and then you're going to start paying attention to little details, and you'll start to do other things with it. But those are the kind of things that doing something constantly, it's very rare to build up a skill by reading a book about it and doing it once. It's really, if you look at, like, whether it's editing on the back end here, or working on some of the bits and pieces, or doing things on, a lot of these things come from repetition, and repetition measured in hundreds of repetitions, not 10 repetitions, not one repetition. And so we have some opportunities for you to play if you're interested. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I was looking for the best place to submit feedback, and we don't currently have a website Discord. We do have RFI, and that's a good place to put it in or tag it. Maybe we'll add a website place specifically if you have your suggestions, feedback, or if you're willing to offer your help.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, and just as a thought along those lines, if you've submitted something in Discord, maybe it was a year ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, and we haven't addressed it, or no one said anything about it, and you've just been thinking in the back of your head, why is it taking that long? Come back to us and say, I like this, and I think I know how to do it. That'll get it right to the top.
And you don't even have to know how to do it at the beginning. The web development, yes, but for graphics or ideas, a lot of times we don't know what we're doing. We're like, there wasn't a pre-show coordinator. That doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the same way that we use it. And it just happened, we will figure it out, and we will make it better, and we'll build systems around it. So, being committed to it and interested in it is the most important thing. So we'll do this about every quarter, give you an update on what we're doing. Think about those things in between those times. And of course, you can talk about them on Discord anytime you want, and also bring them up on Sundays. We don't usually talk about the website that much during the week, but if you bring them up on Sundays and concerns and so on and so forth, we're working through that. So so definitely Sundays are our introspection day. Is really the day to bring up concerns or more suggestions around it. Again, we don't talk about it. It's mostly, I just don't want to bore people who are coming on the weekdays with internal matters. We do this every once in a while on the weekdays so that it's recorded and people can watch it later and then give us feedback. But for the most part, if you have those kind of comments and questions, go ahead and throw those into Sunday or into Discord. RFI is room for improvement if you're in Discord, and it's not request for information. Kind of it is. It's kind of a request for information, but we call it room for improvement. And if you have concerns or complaints or anything else that you'd like us to make better, RFI in Discord, it's near the top, and you can throw it in there, and let us know things that you'd like to see more of, or sometimes less of. So definitely throw them in there. And again, Sunday is the day every week that we hear you out. Like, what are your comments, questions, concerns about what we're doing here? As you don't see that very often if you're only watching the YouTube channel, because it's an internal discussion. We don't stream it, but you can, if you're interested, you'll see the links to how to get into that and watch it if you go to officehours.global/join, and you can get the email from there. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks to the producers for all the great questions, both in the first hour and the second hour. We really appreciate your contribution. And a big thanks out to the panel. A lot of our uncommon panelists who came here to have this discussion with you about the website. We really appreciate you guys jumping on, and you folks. And we hope to see you more often. And we'd like to. Cindy, we have to do another turning session.
Yes, I just 100%.
So great! It's so great to watch you turn. So I, like let's just find a time before we get through the end of the year to just. I don't even know what we'll talk about, but talking about it again, it's like magic. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. While I was thinking about it, when I saw you, I was like, oh, are we going to turn? No, we're not going to turn. All right. So anyway, it was funny. I was talking to someone who has another YouTube channel that turns, and I mentioned that I knew you, and he's like, you know Cindy. So anyway, it's fun. Anyways, but thank you to, again, Adrian and Brett for jumping on as well, and Josh, not normal folks that we normally have on. We would love to have you guys on more often. So hopefully you'll pop in. And if you're interested in being a panelist, of course, you can go to officehours.global/panelist and sign up. We appreciate everybody's contribution there. And we appreciate the incredible team that makes this all happen. That's this back-end team that we were inviting you to, whether it's the website or the show or managing the show or cutting the show or developing for the show. All those things are really important. We traveled 88,000 miles today, 139,000 kilometers, and that is 687, wait for it, bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
Hey, you think Midjourney could turn us all into like Simpsons for our?
I have a Simpsons version of myself that I did in Midjourney. It looks very Simpson-y. I look adequately dorky, so that's it's good. I think I did me as Homer Simpson. All right. Thanks everybody.